Manuel Swinton, 30 years old, Fayetteville, North Carolina. Sergeant Angel S. Rampersad, 28 years old, Ozone Park, New York, believed to have been killed in action on July 17th during an enemy attack at an air base in Jordan. Isabella Gonzalez, a private, 19 years old, of Carrollton, Texas, was killed in action July 17th during an enemy attack. You've been watching President Trump attend this dignified transfer, along with the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, to pay their ultimate respects to those fallen soldiers who have paid the ultimate sacrifice for this country. And our hearts are with them, their families. So difficult to watch. I'm Sandra Smith. Thank you for joining our coverage. Good to have you here today, Jillian.
Thank you, Sandra. It's a privilege to be with you today during this moment, especially. I'm Jillian Turner. You know, the Commander-in-Chief obviously has many different roles within his job, many different assignments. This one, attending a dignified transfer ceremony like this one, is undoubtedly the most challenging, the most painful. It's also the most reverent for the President of the United States. The last time President Trump attended one was back in March, honoring the lives and service of 6 Americans who were killed during the same military campaign, the war in Iran. And it's worth mentioning that what we see today, this ceremony is just the tail end of a very complex, very nuanced, very thoughtful process that begins halfway across the world overseas when U.S. teams, specialty teams, identify the remains of fallen service members. It's a sacrosanct duty. These are highly trained teams of specialists we're seeing transport their remains today. It is quite an amazing feat.
As Americans, we stop and we honor those who make the ultimate sacrifice. There's the President and the Secretary of War watching on as we stop and remember, and we grieve along with their families. Let's bring in now our Fox News Chief National Security Correspondent, Jennifer Griffin. She is in our Washington newsroom watching this with us. Jennifer?
Sandra, every president says that this is the most difficult thing that they have to do during their presidency, to go to Dover, to meet the families, and to greet the caskets of the fallen, knowing that they have sent these individuals, these soldiers, to war. It weighs heavily on them. We've heard President Trump speak about that in the past. This is the 3rd time that he has been to Dover since the start of the Iran war. There were the 6 service members who were killed early on in the conflict when a drone hit their base in Kuwait. There were the 6 service members who died in the KC-135 air refueling plane that went down over Iraq. And now today, we have these 4 other soldiers. First Lieutenant Tyler James Feehan, we're learning more about his life from his family. His family in Utah has set up a scholarship fund for ROTC students at his former alma mater, the University of Southern Utah, with the death gratuity, the $100,000 that each service member will be given by the Department of War. And his family has decided to devote that to future service members. He was supposed to return home and get married. His family remembers him as an adventurer. He went to Mount Everest Base Camp. He hiked the Camino Trail. He was planning to come home and get married. Then there was Private Isabella Gonzalez, who's 19 years old. She just graduated last year from high school. She told her English teacher just before she was graduating that she planned to enlist so that she could eventually go to college. She's from northern Texas, from Carrollton, Texas. Sergeant Michael Swinton, his wife, from Fayetteville, North Carolina, who was stationed at Fort Bragg. His wife, Mia, posted a heart-rending post on Facebook showing him hugging his 4-year-old daughter. It was the last picture she would take of him through the car window in his uniform as he hugged his 4-year-old daughter. He also had a 6-year-old son. He was killed in northern Iraq when they were trying to disable a one-way Iranian attack drone last weekend. And then there is Sergeant Angel Rampersad. We just learned her name and received a photo of her, 28-year-old Angel Rampersad of Queens, New York. She has been described as believed to be dead because her remains have not yet been identified. They will be identified at Dover, but she had been found under the rubble of that drone strike on the Jordanian base. So these four American heroes have returned to Dover. The president, the Secretary Hegseth, as well as the Army Secretary Dan Driscoll were there to greet them, as well as General Dan Kane. They spent about 3 hours with the family members. That's what they do before we see this ceremony and the flag draped caskets come out of the back of that plane. They spend time individually with the family members. So a heartbreaking moment today at Dover Air Force Base. Dylan?
Jennifer, this is the most sacred of all the duties that the Commander-in-Chief carries out, that the Secretary of War carries out, as you mentioned. What we saw when we witness these ceremonies, what we're really seeing is the tail end of this very complex process that began with sometimes search and rescue operations on the other side of the world. The journey of these four service members, these American heroes back to US soil, has been a nuanced one, and one that has been carried out by many teams of different types of specialists. Can you talk us through a little bit of the process that goes on here, the part that we're not seeing?
Well, I think what's notable, Jillian, is that from 1991, the first Gulf War, until 2009, under the Iraq and Afghan War, there were no visuals of the return of the fallen to Dover Air Force Base. It was forwarded by the U.S. government. President Obama then lifted that restriction. And in 2009, we started with the commission of the families, and they have to give permission for a TV cameras to be present. Then we started to see these images. So there was a decision taken from 1991 to 2009 not to show these ceremonies. Now we have the visuals, and it's important for every American to see what the dignity, and that's why they call it a dignified transfer of these remains. The caskets themselves will go to the home state and to the home of each of these service members so that they can carry out a service at home. Then they will likely be given the option, and most family members take it, of being buried at Arlington National Cemetery at a later date. The care which goes into this, these Air Force members who are part of the honor guard who are receiving the caskets, they are trained, they move in unison. You can see the precision with which they move. This is a highly trained unit and treated with the utmost respect, as are the remains of the fallen. When they get to Dover Air Force Base, not only is the identification made possible there if there are remains that had not been identified until this point, but there also is the treatment of the service member themselves. Often they will have been taken to Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany as a prelude to being brought home. That is sort of standard protocol. But again, this was a complicated situation in Jordan because there was a lot of rubble. And as we mentioned, Sergeant Angel Rampersad, who is believed to be in one of those four caskets, she was buried under that rubble on Saturday.
So difficult, Jennifer. Jennifer Gritton joining us on all of that. Thank you so much, Jennifer.